North Wilkesboro is officially back with racing in 2022. Dale Jr. is going to be in the Fox Sports booth at Talladega, and there is going to be indications that Bristol Dirt might be returning in 2023. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go and just jump straight into those rules really quickly. We've got one paint scheme we're taking a look at really quick, and it's Noah Gragson's 2022 Wendy scheme that we're seeing this weekend at Talladega. Oh my goodness, this paint scheme is absolutely incredible, and it's amazing that Wendy's is officially back sponsoring NASCAR. This is the first time they've sponsored a NASCAR stock car since 1995 when they sponsored Stanton Barrett. So it's been many years since they sponsored a car, and this paint scheme is absolutely incredible. Like, it looks amazing. Did a great job on this paint scheme, and I'm definitely looking forward to see on the racetrack this weekend here at Talladega. This paint scheme is absolutely awesome. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Caymus Vineyards. As Caymus Vineyards is going to be sponsoring Ty Dillon throughout the 2022 season as an associate sponsor. They'll sponsor him throughout the rest of this year and be an associate sponsor. Really cool that the company's willing to step up and sponsor a driver like Ty Dillon. It's good that the company's willing to work with him. This is good that he has sponsors willing to work with him. So congrats, Ty Dillon, picking up a sponsor, and really glad to see that Caymus Vineyards is going to be sponsoring Ty Dillon here throughout the 2022 season for the rest of the season. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Kyle Busch. As Kyle Busch last night won his 60th Cup Series race. He is now only the 9th driver to pick up their 60th career NASCAR Cup Series victory. And now he's joined an elite class of 9 drivers who now have 60 career victories. Whether you like Kyle Busch or not, Kyle Busch is one of the greatest drivers of all time. Yes, the last couple years of wins have not come very often, but Kyle Busch is still one of the greatest drivers of our generation and of our time, and also became the 8th driver to win this season last night. Really glad to see Kyle Busch was able to break that set, and congratulations to Kyle Busch on picking up the victory last night at Bristol Dirt. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about more Kyle Busch. As Kyle Busch last night also tied up Richard Petty for the most consecutive seasons with at least one victory at 18. Kyle Busch won every year since jumped up the Cup Series on a full-time basis in 2005. It's tied the record that Richard Petty has. If Kyle Busch is able to win in 2023, which indicates he'll be back next year, which they're still looking for sponsors for Kyle Busch next year, he will most likely break that record as Kyle Busch still has potential to do that. And Kyle Busch, like I said, is one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history. So congratulations to Kyle Busch on an incredible opportunity. Congratulations on getting a record broken or tied. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Hendrick Motorsports. As last night, Hendrick Motorsports became the first organization to have more than 2,000 top 10s over the whole entire organization. That is absolutely amazing. Now, it was recorded by how many times a team finishes in the top 10 is a number they get. Since Hendrick got 3 cars in the top 10, that's the number of top 10s they will get on their team roster. Regardless how you feel about Hendrick Motorsports, this is an incredible statistic and awesome to see that Hendrick Motorsports continues to break boundaries. I mean, just last week, they got 10,000 laps sled, and the fact that they were able to get 2,000 top 10s now is absolutely incredible as an organization, and they've only done that one like 40 years. I mean, they've only been around since, 1983, so in 40 seasons, they've been able to get 2,000 top 10s. Hendrick has still got a lot of potential to do a lot of great things. So, congratulations, Hendrick Motorsports, on beating an incredible record. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about the Bristol Truck Race. As on Saturday night's Bristol Truck Race was the first race in Trucks history where everyone was running at the end of the race. I believe Austin himself finished the most laps down, I think 7 or 8 laps down if I'm not mistaken. So the Truck Series, they basically completed more than 90% of the race and they were able to get that done. That is an incredible statistic in my opinion that they were able to have that many trucks able to finish. All 36 trucks finished, considering you have 1.2 trucks really stuck together and went multiple laps down. You had a lot of wrecks in that race and a lot of cars that got damaged. But the fact they're able to beat that record, I think, is absolutely incredible. And like I said, huge congratulations on the opportunity for that. Congrats to the Truck Series for getting the first Truck Series race to have no cars fall out of it. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Jerry Gappens. As Jerry Gappens has been named the general manager at Eldora, as Roger Slack has stepped down after being in the organization or Eldora as a general manager for 12 years. He has stepped down from that role, and Jerry Gapp has been working as a higher up at Eldora Speedway. He has become the new general manager at Eldora. This is a really cool opportunity for Jerry Gappens. I don't really know how good Jerry Gappens is, but when he's getting promoted to general manager, you've got to be really, really good. And like I said, this is a huge opportunity for Jerry Gappens to really prove how good he is, and he's going to be in a good position keeping Eldora, considering Roger, he's going to have a lot of shoes to fill because Roger Slack did an incredible job for 12 years, put on incredible preludes to the dreams over the years, and also was there as a general manager when we had the Truck Series there from 2013 to 2019. But huge opportunity for Jerry Gappens. Huge congratulations to him, and I'm glad to see, though, he's getting an opportunity to work there. Pretty awesome news, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Randy Pemberton, as unfortunately, very sad, tragic news. It was announced on Saturday evening that Randy Pemberton unfortunately passed away. Randy Pemberton had worked on multiple shows throughout the years. He'd been working on the Inside NASCAR show that Chris Myers worked on over the years, and was an awesome, and of course the brother of the other Pemberton, Ryan Pemberton, and the other Pemberton as well. It's just so sad to see a person who's been a legend in the media center for many, many years unfortunately pass away. My prayers and condolences do go out to the Pemberton family at this time. Randy's legacy is going to live on for a very, very long time, and Randy was just, I believe, 62 or 63 years old. So my prayers and condolences do go out to Randy's family. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Clint Bowyer. It was announced on Friday that Clint Bowyer is going to pilot Davey Allison's iconic number 28 with ceremonial lap at Talladega prior to the Geico 500 on April 24th. I think this is really, really cool, to be honest with you. I think it's awesome that Clint Bowyer is going to have an opportunity to do this. Now, I think a lot of people would have preferred Larry Mcreynolds get in the car since he was the crew chief, but I think it is really, really cool that they're letting someone get into here and do a ceremonial lap. It's just similar to what Dale Jr. did when he got into the 3 car, I believe in 2018 or 2019, a couple years ago. They're doing this with Clint Bowyer, who of course works at Fox currently at the moment, and I think this is such an iconic moment for our sport too, to have a guy like Clint Bowyer get into his legendary Davey Allison, who could have been one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history, who is a NASCAR Hall of Famer now. Absolutely huge congratulations, and a great opportunity for Clint Bowyer to drive the iconic number 28 here next weekend. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about the Penny's Series. As Penny's, it was announced on Saturday that Penny's has signed a 5-year extension to continue sponsoring the Canadian Series. Now, this is a big Penny announcement for the Canada Big Canada announcement. Now, I think a lot of people feel underwhelmed, but honestly, I think this still is a pretty big deal, considering the fact that now the Canadian Series has stability when it comes to their sponsor. Penny's been sponsoring the Canadian Series, I believe, since 2018 or 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And now they have a sponsor that's willing to work with them for the next 5 years. I think it's great that you have a company that's willing to work with the Canadian Series. The Canadian Series continues to grow. It was also announced that you're going to be seeing some Canadian races on Flow Sports Well. I believe this is the first time that you'll be able, if you want to watch TSM, they're moving some of the Canadian races, the Penny Series races, over to Flow Sports TV. So you've got an opportunity if you want to watch it. If you have a Flow Sports account, you're going to have an opportunity to watch it. So this is really, really huge in my opinion, and I'm very, very happy to see that the Penny Series is officially got Penny's back for another 5 years. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Derek Griffith. As Derek Griffith wasn't involved in a scary crash at New Hampshire on Sunday morning on Easter morning. There was a very, very scary accident. Tyler Tasami, I think, someone who really got into them. Someone basically had a tire going down, and he came straight down and literally crashed and collided into Derek Griffith, and he hit the outside wall really hard. And luckily, with how much damage, especially there was from the wreck, it's very lucky that Derek Griffith was able to walk away from that. Same with Tyler Tasami, I think was the other truck car that got involved in that. They're very lucky, or someone else was very lucky to basically not get killed in a wreck like that. There are some people who just should not be in the cars. I'm telling you, should not be at higher tracks, especially these kids. Some of these guys should not be in these cars, and it's really frustrating considering Derek Griffith is a really talented driver, and you know, it's just so sad to see Derek Griffith could have gotten really hurt. He's an upcoming driver too, so very sad for sure. Glad Derek Griffith is okay and not hurt in the wreck. That was very scary, and glad to see that Derek Griffith is absolutely all right, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking more about Kyle Busch. As in the media center last night after the NASCAR Cup Series race, after he picked up the victory, Coy Gibbs, who basically one of the higher-ups at Joe Gibbs Racing, of course, also some of Joe Gibbs. Coy Gibbs indicates the team is having talks with potential sponsors for the 2023 season. Now, of course, as many of you know at this point, M&M's is going to be leaving Joe Gibbs Racing, leaving NASCAR in general, after the 2022 season. And they're needing to find a new sponsor for 2023. They've already been talking to teams, but there are more indications they're still looking to talk to potential sponsors. Now, what are sponsors that probably are looking at sponsoring Kyle Busch next year? You do, of course, have maybe some companies he's worked with. Maybe ServPro that sponsors his son in those little quarter midgets. ServPro has been sponsoring Brexton, so that could be a potential sponsor. You do, of course, have Riding Energy. You could step up to the plate and sponsor next year. Riding Energy would be pretty cool. If they got to sponsor some Cup Series races, I think that'd be a really cool opportunity. But I think there's some other sponsors that are probably looking to sponsor Kyle Busch. You probably do have companies like, I'm going to throw the one out that I think most likely is going to end up being it. I think it's actually going to be Menards who is going to sponsor Kyle Busch. And I'm going to tell you why I think it's Menards. There's a couple reasons for this. One, Menards sponsors a bunch of different drivers, and this includes Brandon Jones. They sponsor Brandon Jones in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with Joe Gibbs Racing. They sponsor him all year, so that would be a great sponsor to work with. And plus, Kyle Busch has actually been part of Menards commercials very, very recently. If you've been watching some TV, and you've probably seen a lot of times where they've been seeing a lot of commercials with Kyle Busch in it. So I think Menards is actually going to be a sponsor that Kyle Busch is going to have. We're going to have to wait and see what happens, what sponsor does eventually work with Kyle Busch going forward, but I believe that Menards is going to be the sponsor that is going to work with Kyle Busch going forward, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Alexander Rossi. There was an article that was printed out by Jenna Fryer, and if you actually read the full entire article, you probably saw something that was very, very shocking. Now, Alexander Rossi currently only has a contract with the Andretti Autosport in the IndyCar Series for the 2022 season. And there's been a lot of rumors and rumblings about the future of where Alexander Rossi is going to go. There's also a big rumor going on that McLaren is potentially going to open up a third car in IndyCar next year with Air McLaren SP. Alexander Rossi, according to this article, might be headed to Aero McLaren SP. Alexander Rossi, of course, the 2016 Indianapolis 500 winner and winner of many IndyCar races throughout his career, and also a former Formula One driver when he drove for the Manor team back in 2015 before jumping over to IndyCar 2016. Alexander Rossi has been absolutely frustrated, and he's not been able to win a race in a couple years, and he's definitely struggled the last years in IndyCar, and I think he's looking for a fresh take and a fresh new way to go and find a new team to race with. And I think absolutely Aero McLaren SP would be a great organization to work with. I think he's absolutely a driver that could do really, really good. And he has two pretty good teammates he'd be working with as well. You've got Pat O'Ward, who's been contending for championships in IndyCar. You've got Felix Rosenqvist, who's a pretty solid driver, hasn't won this year, but is a pretty solid driver. And I think Alexander Rossi would be a great fit. And I think he wants to find a place where he can be eventually the number one driver. He won't probably be the number one driver, but he probably wants a new, fresh area where he can go with. If it is true that he is going to Aero McLaren SP, I'm absolutely down for it. I think he's a driver that can do really, really good at the team, and I do hope that he does wherever he goes. I do hope he does have some success, so we'll wait to see what happens if he does go over there, but it looks like there's potential Alexander Rossi might be headed to Aero McLaren SP in IndyCar in 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ben Rhodes. As Ben Rhodes was interviewed by Matt Weaver after he won the Truck Series race at Bristol on Saturday night, and he was asked some questions in regards to his future and if he does want to eventually move up to the Cup Series. Ben Rhodes says that he loves being at ThorSport Racing and is focused on winning truck championships and winning more races, but if an opportunity does come up and he wants to race some Cup Series races, he is open to doing that. Now, Ben Rhodes currently, a lot of people probably think he's a lot older considering he's been in the Truck Series since 2016. But Ben Rhodes, surprisingly, I think he's only 24 or 25 years old. So he's still a relatively young driver who could still have a very long-term career. He's just been in the sport for such a long time that people really didn't realize this, and including myself, I didn't realize that Ben Rhodes was as young as he is. The guy has a lot of potential where I think he could still win Truck Series championships, but I do think at some point Ben Rhodes is going to have to make a decision if he wants to jump up to the Cup Series or not long term. Because I think Ben Rhodes is getting to that age where he's getting into the mid-20s now, and there's a lot less opportunities and rides available. Now, I do think Ben Rhodes long-term will get some Cup Series starts. I think he's still going to get more at maybe some point this year or maybe in the next couple of years. But I think, in all seriousness, needs to consider jumping up. So I think he's absolutely ready to make the jump back up to Xfinity. He's proven himself in the Truck Series. He has a Truck Series championship now. I know he's got stability, but I think if anyone could do really, really good and have a great opportunity at an Xfinity organization, I think Ben Rhodes would be capable of doing that. So I hope Ben Rhodes eventually does get an opportunity to make that jump up. I think Ben Rhodes, it'd be great for the sport if Ben Rhodes could make that jump up to the NASCAR Cup Series or even the NASCAR Xfinity Series for that matter. I think it'd be really, really awesome. We'll wait to see what happens, but Ben Rhodes might be in the future make that jump up to another series here in the near future. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Denny Hamlin. Now, Denny Hamlin was being interviewed by the media, I think either Friday evening or Saturday afternoon, and he says that he's not a fan of shifting at Martinsville, and he kind of hopes that shifting kind of goes away with the future tests that are coming up at Martinsville. Now, there is some tire tests that are going to be happening in Martinsville at some point later this year. It's unclear when exactly that's going to be, but it's going to happen, of course, before we do return to Martinsville later this year. And I think Denny Hamlin isn't the only one that's really a fan of shifting. Dale Jr. also was not a fan of shifting at Martinsville either. He was noted before the race even went green. He was not a fan of the shifting at Martinsville. And I think it is why, one of the big reasons why, along with how bad the tires were, I think that's a big reason why the race just was not as good as it could have been, to be real with you. I think Denny Hamlin has a really big point here. And when you're one of the most successful drivers in the NASCAR at Martinsville ever, you have to kind of understand where Denny Hamlin is coming from right here. And again, he's not the only one that's been a fan against shifting at Martinsville. I think Kyle Busch has said it in the past. I think Kevin Harvick's been against it in the past. And I know a few other drivers in the Cup Series probably are not a big fan of the shifting as well. And they probably want to see less shifting and the gear ratios overall change. I do know that there are things that they have to fix overall. And there's some things that are going to be really, really big issues to fix those. But that being said, I do 100% understand where Denny Hamlin's come from, and I do think he has a really good point right here. So Denny Hamlin got a good, interesting point about the shifting issues, and I do think that maybe that's one thing that NASCAR could be looking at when they do have the test coming up here in the near future, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Larry Mcreynolds. As it was announced on the broadcast yesterday for the green flag drop that Larry Mcreynolds is going to be crew chiefing for Jeffrey Earnhardt this weekend at Talladega in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. That's right, Larry Mcreynolds is returning to Rich Choice Racing this weekend and will be a crew chief once again. I believe this will be the first time Larry Mcreynolds has crew chief since like 2000 or 1999. He has not crew chief in many, many years. Of course, the crew chiefing winner in 1992 for the Daytona 500. Also the winner of the 98 Daytona 500 as a crew chief with Dale Earnhardt. And also the winner with Davey Allison in the Daytona 500 in 1992. Larry Mcreynolds is one of the most successful crew chiefs, but not just one of the most successful crew chiefs. He is one of the best TV personalities we have had and one of my favorite parts of the Fox Sports booth. Larry not only can be someone that's really, really funny, but can also be very, very insightful as well. And I'm very glad to see that Fox is allowing him to do this, to get an opportunity to go back working as a crew chief. I think he's someone that has deserved the opportunity to get back behind the crew chief and boss. And I think, yes, he's a little bit older, but I do think that he could be someone that could do a really, really good job. And it's been really cool to see Rich Choice Racing bringing back some old hirees. Over the last couple of years, I've had Andy Peter come back and work as a technical advisor for the team. And I think he's been a big part in why that team has been absolutely improving over the years. And now they've got Larry Mcreynolds coming back and working as a crew chief. I think Jeffrey Earnhardt, all seriousness, could pull what Dale Earnhardt did in 2000. I think Larry Mcreynolds knows about this team. He was at the team many, many years ago. Yes, not for a long time. But the fact we're going to see a three-car team with the RCR and Xfinity, you're going to have really something that's kind of interesting because he's working with another Earnhardt, Jeffrey, who's been a successful driver, or well, not the most successful driver, but a driver who absolutely has that Earnhardt connection in our family. And, of course, Larry Mcreynolds, who was part of helping crew chief Dale Earnhardt to that 1998 Daytona 500. I think that'll play a major factor into how much success we'll see. And, again, huge congratulations to Larry Mcreynolds on once again getting another opportunity to come back to the crew chief box. I think Larry Mcreynolds is an excellent crew chief and, again, one of the best of our time. I think he should be an NASCAR Hall of Famer, in my opinion, not just for how good of a crew chief he was, but for what he's able to do in the broadcast booth. So, like I said, huge and incredible opportunity. And congratulations, Larry Mcreynolds, on getting a massive opportunity to return to the Fox Sports booth. I think, not Fox Sports booth, the crew chief box with RCR. Huge congratulations right there, and I'm glad to see that he will be back in the crew chiefing role going forward, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about some drivers' opinions after the Cup Series race at Bristol Dirt. A couple drivers spoke their opinions in regards to the Bristol Dirt. Now, we'll first talk about Kyle Larson's comments. Kyle Larson says that it really felt like a dirt race. Kyle Larson had pretty much the most positive comments. He did say there are some things they can absolutely do to make this a little bit better. But he did say that basically when the top line, it can absolutely work on that. But he did say that it absolutely felt like a traditional dirt race. He seemed the most happy of the drivers that we saw in the interviews. He seemed very, very happy. He, of course, did get a top 5 here at Bristol Dirt of the favor coming in. But he almost won the race here at Bristol Dirt. It was right there at the end of the race. Would have gotten a top 5, but he did end up finishing 4th. So he did get a very solid top 5. Larson did really, really good in this race. And he had a lot of success in this event, too. Next, we'll talk about Kyle Busch, who won the race. And Kyle Busch says that there absolutely were bright spots in the event, but there also were some more. He said the negatives really outweighed the positives in this event. Kyle Busch definitely had some interesting opinions right there. He definitely said there were some bright spots. He felt the racing points was really, really good, but with the abrasive action, dry off the track, make sure get the track wet and stuff, make sure the track, basically, so the track didn't break up. That was something he was not overall a major fan of, which I kind of agree with Kyle Busch. I do think some of the red flags were a little bit too much, but you do have to have red flags there to kind of make sure that the track is in good shape. Because if you run the cars all 250 laps, the track is going to break up and it's going to really shave. That's why they have to go ahead and do that right there. So Kyle Busch definitely has some good opinions right here, and I think his opinions are right. But the driver that was the most outspoken after the Bristol Dirt race was Kevin Harvick. And Kevin Harvick was not happy after he got taken out of the race, after getting involved in a wreck. Kevin Harvick said was very, very happy. Said the track was not prepared properly. Basically said that we should not do this anymore. And also said that his car was really, really good. Now, Kevin Harvick was probably just at the time very, very upset because Kevin Harvick did unfortunately fall out of this race. Got involved in a wreck and was a lap down early in the race. He kind of felt like he should have gotten his lap back early, but he did go a lap down manually, so that's why he didn't get his lap back. And he blames the track prep, which I will say I kind of disagree. The track prep was way better this year than it was last year. Yes, I don't think they should have put water on the track before. They should not have watered the track last night when rain was coming into the area. They shouldn't have done that, but at the same token, at the same time, you do have to kind of wet the track right there and make some changes right there. But I do always think Kevin Harvick there's only been one thing that Kevin Harvick's really been happy with this year generally, and that's, of course, the fact of the clash. Kevin Harvick seems like he's been getting more and more angry over the years. He's been starting to get a little bit angry, and he's getting up there in age. He's the oldest full-time Cup Series driver. But again, we do have to listen to his points. Even if we do agree or disagree with him, Kevin Harvick does have a point. Now, I will say, though, we should continue doing dirt racing long-term. I'm definitely for dirt racing going forward, and I will say, I'll talk my opinions on Bristol going forward here in just a little bit. But I think Kevin Harvick ultimately does have some points here, but he also was a little frustrated and kind of whining just a little bit right there. But his comments were definitely interesting. He says we shouldn't do Bristol anymore going forward. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 3 major stories of today's episode as we are talking about Bristol Dirt. Now, Bob Parker said on the Fox broadcast yesterday that Bristol Dirt is anticipated to make a return in 2023. It's not confirmed at this point that it will return in 2023, but it's anticipated that Bristol Dirt is going to be returning next year. Now, the crowd was not absolutely amazing for Bristol Dirt. I think a lot of that was due to Easter, but I will say the crowd definitely did look a little bit better than what we saw. I think there were probably around 60,000 to 70,000 people that were at the track. The official attendance figures are probably never going to come out because, again, SMI generally does not release those attendance figures unless, of course, it's sold out. They generally do not release those attendance figures. But I will say this going forward about Bristol Dirt. I am 1,000% down with them coming back to Bristol Dirt next year for a couple reasons. One, I think the racing was absolutely amazing. It was just absolutely incredible throughout the event. I was actually against them coming back to Bristol Dirt after this year and going to a different dirt track. But after last night's race, especially yesterday, there were definitely a lot of rain delays that did come into factor and played a role into it. But I think that the racing generally in this event especially was really, really good when they were green. I know there were a lot of yellows in the event. That's one thing they do have to work on is trying to see if there's not as many yellows going forward. But I think the event was absolutely amazing. You had an incredible race that happened. You had great battles throughout the race. I think this is one of the better races. And I think definitely this year compared to last year, I think we did generally have a much better race. Multiple groups were available. Last year was just a single group track where really no one was able to pass and a dust bowl. This year, the dust was not an issue, and that was really, really good. Now, there are things I definitely think that they need to prove. Number one, they need to put this race, if they're going to continue in Bristol Dirt long term, I do think they need to have this race a little bit later in the year. I think in May is when they need to have it, and the reason is because especially in the South in April, it does tend to rain, and they've had an issue when it comes to rain. It seems like this race, for whatever reason, does have rain issues. Now, luckily, they didn't have to postpone any of this race at all, and they were able to get the whole entire race in. It didn't have to postpone it to Monday. So the ratings definitely should be better, and it was going into the news time, so the ratings are going to be good. But I think a big decision also is going to come from how the ratings do. If the ratings are absolutely insane, again, I think we're going to get some pretty good ratings. I really believe we will. I think we'll get like 4 or 5 million people, maybe, hopefully. I could entirely be wrong, because again, we did have some delays, and people probably stopped watching. But I will say that this was such an incredible event that I do want to come back here next year and do it, and it looks like that they are going to come back, which again, I think is a major thumbs up in my opinion. I think it's a great decision if they do come back to Bristol Dirt. So I think dirt racing belongs in NASCAR. It's more, and also another thing to mention is Spring Bristol's been revived, and in my opinion, absolutely, I'm down with continuing to do this. And another thing too is it's more diversity on the schedule. Having a dirt race on the schedule is another challenge for the drivers. We've got potential talk of street courses coming here in the next couple of years. You've got short tracks, you've got intermediate tracks, you've got super speedways. It creates different challenges for the drivers, and I think a dirt race in NASCAR absolutely needs to continue to stay, and I do hope that NASCAR does come back here next year. It looks like they're indicating they're going to come back here next year. We'll have to wait and see what happens if NASCAR decides to make a decision on potentially returning to Dirt Bristol going forward. I hope it does happen. We'll have to wait and see what happens if Dirt Bristol does come back here long term, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode, as we are talking about Dale Jr. As it was announced on the Fox Sports broadcast last night, coming to the end of stage 2, in shocking fashion, that Dale Jr. is going to be joining the Fox Sports booth this weekend at Talladega. Now, this definitely really shocked me, considering Dale Jr. works with NBC Sports, but they did mention in Fox that they said thank you to NBC Sports for letting us have an opportunity to bring Dale Jr. over. Dale Jr., of course, the winner of 6 or 7 Talladega races, one of the winningest drivers in Talladega history, and of course a winner of the Daytona 500s and a great super speedway racer. Dale Jr. also is in one thing he's got that a lot of other people don't have is a big broadcasting resume. He's been at NBC since 2018 and has done really, really good. It's been one of the bright spots to NBC. This is the broadcast that I'm most looking forward to all year. Besides ones that Tony Stewart's been in, I think this is a broadcast that I've been generally most looking forward to. So I think not only is Dale Jr. going to bring excitement, I think he's also going to be able to bring a good broadcast as well. And he's probably not going to be looking at a Dane scream like a lot of them have been. And I think he'll call the race as good as he can. And I think he will, this potentially could be, I'm maybe jinxing a little bit like what Daraheen does. But I will say that probably we'll see, probably one of the better broadcasts that we have probably seen here throughout the 2022 season. Dale Jr. is an awesome broadcaster, and I think this is the best combination to have a driver or someone or personality come in and work, since, like I said, Dale Jr. is one of the most successful super speed racers of all time, and I think he will do an amazing job in the broadcast booth this weekend. I think he's going to bring a lot of insight this weekend, and I think he'll do really, really good. Just Fox, please bring the race day back like you've done. I think that would be perfect. Continue the race day like you did last week, and I think you'll have a really, really good broadcast. But I'm absolutely excited to see Dale Jr. back in the booth. He's going to be really, really fun. I think Fox has generally done a really good job of rotation. Even Darrell Waltrip last night, I will say, I was kind of worried about Waltrip being in the booth this weekend. Darrell Waltrip sounded really, really good. And I'm not against him doing 1 or 2 times. I think Darrell Waltrip did a really, really good job. I was worried that Waltrip was going to do bad. He did pretty good last time. Besides Danica, I think everyone else, like Matt Kenseth, Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon even sounded good, Darrell Waltrip, and now Jr. I love the rotation that Fox had, and they've kind of had people in really, really good positions. Now, Jeff Gordon, interesting in Atlanta. He's a pretty good super speed racer, too, but interesting inside Jeff Gordon for Atlanta. But that being said, though, I think it is really exciting that they're bringing Dale Jr. back into the broadcast booth. I think Dale Jr. is a really good commentator, a NASCAR Hall of Famer now, of course. He absolutely deserves it, and congrats, like I said, huge congratulations, Dale. Again, not congrats, but great to see Dale Jr. coming back to the booth. Absolutely deserved, in my opinion, and I'm glad to see that Dale Jr. is going to be the Fox Sports booth. Now, again, this is not also the first time he's worked with the Fox Sports booth. He actually worked with them during the Busch Clash in 2017. when he was not able to race in 2017 after he was not medically clear to come back. I think at the time, or was not, well, at the time he was, because Alex Bowman won the pole at Phoenix. That's why he got into the car. So, in my opinion, huge good to see that Dale Jr. is coming back, and I'm glad to see that Dale Jr. is going to be the Fox Sports booth. I think he's going to bring a lot of insight into the booth, and I think he'll do really, really good here at Talladega this weekend. Now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we are talking about North Wilkesboro. As we've been anticipating a major announcement for North Wilkesboro, well, that major announcement came, and it's absolutely huge. North Wilkesboro is going to be officially back with racing here in 2022. They will be running a grassroots series on the asphalt in August, the old asphalt in August, and then they will go on to the original dirt in October. So they're going to be going back to the original dirt they ran when the track opened up in 1950. So they're going back to original dirt, have some late model racing there. And then they will have a repave in 2023. This is the next major step to get North Wilkesboro back in NASCAR. Now, this is not a NASCAR announcement, but this is absolutely huge for many reasons. This will be the first time that North Wilkesboro is going to be hosting racing since, I think, 2010 and 2011. But unlike last time when North Wilkesboro was around, SMI is having a lot of play into this. Now, we've been following this story for a very long time with North Wilkesboro. North Wilkesboro, of course, they got millions of dollars from the government very recently. Marcus Monis gave them $1 million. I think Dale Jr. then is spending some money as well. And then, of course, $10 million from the government plus another $10 million. So the government basically gave the track around $20 million in grant money to get the track back up and running. They've been working on the track for the last year or so, and now the track is back up and running with racing. This is absolutely incredible for many reasons. North Wilkesboro is one of the most historic tracks in North Carolina. It is not only that, one of the most historic tracks when it comes to racing. Now, for everyone what everyone needs to do, in my opinion, get out to the track and support those local races. If you're in that area, get out there, get the crowd sold out so SMI knows that we can continue going racing long term. Now, there's also been a lot of questions in regards to the future of North Wilkesboro and if there potentially could be some Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series races. Marcus Smith did say during the press conference that the Truck Series absolutely is available to do that. But he did say that he does not feel like there's enough infrastructure for the Xfinity Series and Truck Series, the Xfinity Series and Cup Series, I should say, to race there currently at the moment. Now, I'm going to say this. I think Marcus Smith does want to have Cup Series and Xfinity Series racing there, but I think Marcus Smith is being smart by not just jumping in and saying, yeah, we can absolutely have Cup and Xfinity Series racing happen. I think he's trying to crawl before they walk. He doesn't want to jump in and say, hey, we can absolutely have a Cup Series race, because that's going to give the anticipation up before it eventually fails, because it could end up failing here if we do not support North Wilkesboro's return. But I will say that with them, SMI's involvement, I think there's a lot more potential success here. But I think he's being very smart by not jumping the gun and saying, yeah, we can absolutely have a Cup Series race here. Because if he comes out and says that, that could be really bad. I do think eventually, though, there will be a Cup and Xfinity Series racing. My timeline is when it comes to the potential racing returning, I think, first of all, we're going to have the local series come back here in 2022. Then in 2023, maybe ARCA comes back. I think ARCA could come back next year to North Wilkesboro and do some racing right there. I don't think trucks come back to 2024, but I think ARCA come back in late 2023. Then in 2024, I think the Truck Series is actually going to return there. So in a couple years, I think we're going to see NASCAR back at the track. I think 2024 will be the earliest that NASCAR makes a return, and I think they'll return with that. I think they'll also return with the ARCA East and West Series, and I also think the Truck Series will be back in 2024. And then if it continues to be very successful and crowds show up like I think they could end up showing up to North Wilkesboro, I anticipate potentially 2025 for the Xfinity Series, and I think 2026 could be the year the Cup Series returns to North Wilkesboro. I think the earliest is going to be 2026 for the Cup Series. It could be earlier, like 2024, but I think in all seriousness, I think 2026 is the most realistic potential return. This is absolutely huge for many reasons. North Wilkesboro, like I said, has not hosted any sort of racing here in 12 years now. The track's sat abandoned, but over the last year, especially really since that, really ever since they started cleaning up the track a couple years ago, there's been a major push to get North Wilkesboro back, and North Wilkesboro is on the grounds and is starting to come back, and it's just so incredible to see that a legendary track of North Wilkesboro is going to be coming back. I never thought in my lifetime, or never thought that it would ever happen again, that we see North racing at North Wilkesboro once again. But ladies and gentlemen, it's officially happening. It's officially back, and this is incredible. There's been such a huge short track movement over the last year or so. There's already talk of National Fairgrounds coming back on the NASCAR schedule really soon. That seems like it's more realistic for Cup Series Day, currently the North Wilkesboro. You've got talk of the Auto Club turning into a short track. You've got other tracks like Rockingham that could be returning here in the next couple of years, and it's so cool to see that there's a revitalization of short tracks in the sports. So it's absolutely incredible to see, and I'm very pumped up and excited that North Wilkesboro is going to be back with some racing. There's a schedule on the website. You should definitely go check it out, and hopefully you guys can make it out to North Wilkesboro. I'm going to try my best to make it out some of these races in North Wilkesboro, but do your part to get out there and get out to some North Wilkesboro races going forward. So anyway, that's today's long NASCAR and motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel notification to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on pages as well. Let's get you below over that and comment with your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about North Wilkesboro returning? Do you think the Cup Series will ever return to the track or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all the other stories like Dale Jr. returning to Fox we discussed today on the channel? Let me know in the comments below. Most likely tomorrow I'm going to have race picks for Talladega out on the channel for the Geico 500. I will have another special video that's probably going to be coming out on Thursday that I think you guys are really going to enjoy that I've got coming out on Thursday as well. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for more awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.